On again, off again, fight with Canada after a television ad got under his skin. First, he called off trade talks with Canada earlier this week because of the ad from Ontario's government using a 1987 speech from Republican President Ronald Reagan on the dangers of tariffs and protectionism. Last night, Trump posted on social media that he planned to hike tariffs on imports of Canadian goods by an extra 10% because the ad wasn't pulled off the air immediately and ran Friday during the first game of baseball's World Series. Joining us now, Congressman Brendan Boyle of Pennsylvania. He's a ranking member on the House Budget Committee. Congressman Boyle, as always, thank you for coming to the weekend. I want to play some sound from Friday from the president talking about that Canada ad. Watch this.
What they did is really dishonest, and I heard they were pulling the ad. I didn't know they were putting it on a little bit more. They could have pulled it tonight.
They're going to pull it Monday.
Well, that's dirty playing.
But
I can play dirtier than they can, you know?
It's not on the Australian.
Really, very dishonest.
So, Congressman Boyle, that was the president speaking Friday, heading to Marine One on his way to Malaysia. I'm just wondering your response to the president issuing an additional 10% tariff on Canada because of an ad.
It's really hard to believe that this person is still president of the United States and acting in such an immature way. Next, he's going to tack on another 10% because the Toronto Blue Jays won Game 1. It's just as arbitrary and bizarre. And guess what? On Monday morning, he could suddenly announce that there is this, quote, big, beautiful trade deal, and the tariff is zero. It is just as arbitrary as that. This is no way to conduct foreign policy and trade policy, because let's not forget, trade policy really is the intersection of both U.S. foreign policy and our economic policy toward other countries.
Congressman Boyle, thanks for coming on this morning. I want to ask you about the Trump administration and specifically the Agriculture Department's response to the potential for SNAP benefits to disappear for 42 million Americans in November if the government continues to stay closed. There's a banner on the Agriculture Department website that reads, Senate Democrats have now voted 12 times to not fund the food stamp program, also known as the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program. SNAP, bottom line, the well has run dry. At this time, there will be no benefits issued November 1st. We're approaching an inflection point for Senate Democrats. They can continue to hold out for health care for illegal aliens and gender mutilation procedures, or reopen the government so mothers, babies, and the most vulnerable among us can receive critical nutrition assistance. What is your response to this statement and the Trump administration also continuing to use the shutdown and civil servants as a weapon against Democrats in a very unprecedented way?
Well, first, just a reminder, a message like that, similar to the sort of video that Homeland Security was playing at airports, is patently illegal. It's a violation of the Hatch Act. In no previous administration of either party would you see an administration or the executive branch acting in such a way. But Donald Trump does it for the same reason he remarkably tore down the historic East Wing of the White House, because he knows that he can get away with it, because he knows that under Republican control, Congress has ceased to be a co-equal branch of government and instead is acting like subordinates to this president. Now, specifically to SNAP, I want to remind everyone the root of this problem. A few months ago, in what the president used to call the big, beautiful bill, which has now become the big, ugly law, one of the most unpopular pieces of legislation to pass Congress in my lifetime, that delivered in it massive tax breaks, mostly skewed for the rich, and was paid for both through historic-sized healthcare cuts, but also $187 billion worth of cuts to SNAP, the largest cuts to SNAP in American history. Those cuts take effect November 1st. So let's not forget that regardless of the government shutdown, the reason why we are in this situation is because of that original sin of the big, ugly law with $187 billion worth of cuts.
Well, I'm really glad actually you provided that context, because there's also reporting that Josh Hawley is considering introducing a bill to continue to fund SNAP, and that the Senate leader, John Thune, is weighing actually bringing that to the floor as a standalone in the middle of this shutdown. If that makes it through the Senate somehow, are House Republicans going to vote for this?
Well, first, I mean, I give Josh Hawley partial credit, whether it's SNAP or Medicaid. He has said the right things, but the problem was we've never actually seen him then vote according to some of the things that he has said. I'm pretty skeptical that Senate Republican leadership will pass something that's completely contrary to what President Trump wants. If, however, that bill were to make it over to the House, I don't see any scenario in which House Speaker Mike Johnson puts a bill on the floor that isn't blessed by President Donald Trump. The reality is Mike Johnson does whatever Donald Trump tells him to do, period. That's the reason why, and I still can't believe this, for 5 weeks, the House of Representatives has been completely out of session. That is crazy. We have never seen that before in a government shutdown. Typically, it's the exact opposite, that we would be in session every day, including on weekends, attempting to find a bipartisan compromise. That's what should be happening now. But again, you have a Republican leadership in the House that is a wholly owned subsidiary of this White House.
Congressman, the reason that Democrats are refusing to vote to open the government is because of these Obamacare premiums. And I want to read something from the Washington Post from Friday that says that the average Obamacare premiums are set to rise 30%. It's according to final rates approved by the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services and shown in documents reviewed by the Washington Post. The higher prices, affecting up to 17 million Americans who buy coverage on the federal marketplace, reflect the largest annual premium increases by far in recent years. There are some Republicans who've kind of mentioned they would be open to voting for, at least having a bill on the floor in the House and in the Senate that would protect or extend these Obamacare premium subsidies. But what are the actual conversations happening behind the scenes with Republicans about an actual bill? What would it actually look like? Are you hearing anything from your colleagues?
So the problem is there are no conversations taking place because House Republicans literally are not there. They
Y'all ain't got phones?
They are away from Congress. There are certain people I've been texting and talking to. So some of that does still take place, but not nearly as much, to be clear, as when you're in person and you can go quickly grab someone. So it's a little bit of somewhere in between. I just want to correct one thing, though. Senate Democrats did have a bill on the floor in the Senate that would do exactly what you were describing, and it didn't get really any Republican support. The final thing I would say is that in my state of Pennsylvania, when we're talking about the Obamacare exchanges, here it happens to be called Penny, the increase we're looking at is not 30%. It's an average increase of 102%. So it really depends on in which state you happen to live.
Congressman, real quickly, what do you think the possibility of President Trump getting all of the leaders together at the negotiating table to come up with some kind of plan, some kind of deal to reopen the government?
Well, it would be nice if 1 month into this, President Trump woke up, realized there's a government shutdown, stopped playing SimCity with the White House and actually paid attention to this and got everyone together in the same room. Thus far, House and Senate Democratic leaders have been completely locked out of this process. Literally, you might remember more than a month ago, President Trump, sitting in the Oval Office, ordered Republicans not even to talk to us, let alone negotiate with us. So as long as that posture continues, this shutdown will continue.
Congressman Brendan Boyd with the SimCity reference. I haven't heard of that in a long time, sir. Thank you very much for coming on the weekend.
Thank you.